J. Trump is requesting that as part of their investigation into Russian activity, the Congressional Intelligence Committees exercise their oversight authority to determine whether executive branch investigative powers were abused in 2016. Neither the White House nor the president will comment further until such oversight is conducted. All of this amid reports that the president spent the weekend incredibly frustrated that his staff had failed to contain reports about ties to Russia. CNN's White House correspondent Athena Jones is live near the president's Mar-a-Lago estate. Also with us, CNN crime and justice producer Shimon Prokupez. First to you, Shimon. You had this reporting. What more are you hearing about this request from the FBI that the Justice Department came forward and asked the Justice Department to come forward and knock down the president's claims?
Yeah, it's probably has never happened before, Pamela, as you know from covering this beat. It's a pretty extraordinary development. So sometime over the weekend, the FBI went to the Department of Justice and had asked them in conversations to refute basically President Trump, to say, hey, this did not happen. These allegations that he's made that President Obama was involved in some sort of wiretapping of his phone. By extension, I think the director was concerned that the FBI would somehow be blamed for this. And quite frankly, by this request, the FBI is saying this did not happen. We did not wiretap his phones. Yesterday, we spoke with a former senior law enforcement official who had direct knowledge of the investigation from the Department of Justice. They, too, confirmed that this never happened. So today, we're learning it's a pretty significant thing for the chief law enforcement officer to basically now ask for the Department of Justice to refute what the president is saying.
Right. And so this is certainly not something that the president wants as a headline, I imagine, Athena, and it comes on the heels of the reporting that you have that there has been frustration between the president and his team. The president expressed that frustration regarding their handling of these Russia reports. So what are you hearing?
Hi, Pamela. You're right. This is another bad headline for the White House. But I can tell you that since yesterday, we've been reporting that the president was angry on Friday when he was preparing to leave the White House to come down here to Florida. He was angry at his senior staff, also with his communications team, his press team. He's described as showing increasing flashes of anger over their performance. In particular, he was angry about the handling of the story around the reports around the Attorney General Jeff Sessions and his conversations with the Russian ambassador, and the fact that he had to recuse himself from the investigation into all of this. And he's concerned that the focus on those stories overshadowed what he saw as very good reviews from his speech Tuesday night before a joint session of Congress. The president was also mad about nonstop leaks that he feels are undermining his administration. One source describing the president on Friday said, quote, "Nobody has seen him that upset." And now, just today, a few hours ago, we learned through my colleague, White House producer Kevin Liptak, that the president's angry mood followed him down here to Mar-a-Lago. This is according to people who spoke with him at his resort over the past 24 hours, where he continued to express frustrations with his team and its handling of these questions about Russia ties. They said his anger was not directed at any particular aide, but he did gripe that his staff had failed to contain the Russia story. These sources also say that the president angrily raised the wiretapping issue unprompted in his conversations with friends and acquaintances. And while he didn't say what the information he was basing these accusations, what that information was, he did tell these members, these friends, that he expected an investigation to prove him wrong. So we're getting a little bit of information, a little bit of color about the president's mood over the last several days, and it hasn't been good.
It certainly has not. Athena Jones, Shimon Prokupez, thank you so much. This report, no doubt, helping his mood at all. And I want to talk about this with our panel. CNN senior political analyst David Gergen. He was an advisor to Presidents Nixon, Ford, Reagan, and Clinton. Also with us, former FBI Assistant Director Tom Fuentes. So Tom, this request from the FBI to the Department of Justice to knock down this claim by the president, is this unprecedented?
I can't remember another time when something like this happened. So I think, yes, as far as I can tell, it is unprecedented. But I think that, it's interesting that what seems to be a request of the Department of Justice has actually knocked down the story. So it doesn't matter now if the Department of Justice concurs or not. And I'm not sure who would, because if we have the Attorney General Sessions recusing himself on matters related to the campaign investigations and all of this related to the Russian investigation, then who's the request going to go to at the Department of Justice? This is similar to what happened last July when the Attorney General Lynch at the time said that she'll go with whatever recommendation the FBI makes. So yet again, we have a situation where we don't have a fully on board Attorney General with regard to this case.
And it's unlikely something like this would happen without the approval of the FBI Director, James Comey. So what do you make of this remarkable rebuke, essentially, David Gergen, from the nation's top law enforcement official, basically questioning the truthfulness of the president?
Remarkable, historic. I've never seen any of this before. We saw early in the week with his speech to Congress that Donald Trump has the capacity to hit new highs in his presidency, but we're seeing at the end of the week that he can also sink to new lows. He made history at the end of the week with these tweets. We've never had in any of American history I can recall a sitting president accuse a former president of a crime. And doing so without a shred of evidence being presented to the public. And then the president essentially sneaks off the stage and says he won't take any questions about it. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to have his staff to talk about it. And we're left hanging with this very bizarre story in which seems to be no hard evidence so far that President Obama or any tapped Mr. Trump's phones or that there were taps on the Trump Tower. Instead, as Brian Seltzer said just in the last few minutes of your last report, Pamela, what we have is a president who makes something up or reads something on Breitbart and essentially throws it out there without hard evidence and asks the Congress and demands the Congress to investigate. We've never seen that either.
So Director Comey, Tom, has not shied away from basically going solo without the support of the Justice Department, as we saw in a couple of examples in his handling of the Hillary Clinton email probe. So in this case, why wouldn't he just come out and say this is simply not true? The FBI was not wiretapping his phone.
Well, in a way, he has. I think that's the essence of what's come out.
But he
in the last
has, because the media reported that the request was made. But why wouldn't the FBI just put out a statement? Why wouldn't James Comey come out and say something?
Because of what happened last summer when he was chastised for single-handedly saying he wouldn't recommend charges, when that's really the purview of the Department of Justice, and technically he would normally confer with the Attorney General. But as I mentioned, when the Attorney General, yet again we have an Attorney General being removed by themselves from being in the decision making. So now who does he ask, or where does it go? And there's no indication. He doesn't have a deputy attorney general to confer with or seek permission. So I think that's interesting, that he would just go ahead with this and put the request in a way that ensured that it would come out publicly within a matter of a day or two, which it has done.
And of course, the FBI would know if there was a wiretap, a FISA warrant on the then presidential candidate's phone. David Gergen.
If I could clarify that, Pam,
yes.
The FBI is the only federal agency authorized to conduct FISA wiretaps. The only one.
Exactly,
so
which is what I'm saying. They would absolutely know. That's what I'm saying, that the FBI would know.
Yes.
So David Gergen, why wouldn't the president do perhaps a little bit more investigating, or why couldn't he see something like this happening where he makes an allegation like this and then, his own agency, the FBI, could knock it down? Because, of course, the FBI knows what the reality is.
Yeah, and as Jake Tapper has been reporting from his contacts at the White House, they seem to be, the aides of the president seem to be saying to him, listen, he picked this up from Breitbart and what a radio commentator, conservative radio commentator, said. He hasn't picked this up from official government sources, and so you have to wonder, Pamela, to your very good question. My sense is, and this is only an interpretation, that he was so frustrated and so angry that he's been looking for a way to go back on offense in terms of PR. He wanted to move the focus away from Jeff Sessions. He wanted to get away from what he thought was a bad story. He was angry at his people, and he came up with a way on Saturday morning to invent a whole news story that's got us chasing down.
But is this good for him?
But I think
is this
it's
the kind of news story
him.
that's, you know what? But I mean, if this was an attempt to distract from the past headlines, is this any better?
No, I think it's worse. I think it does no honor to him, and it does no honor to his office. I'm just astonished that we're here. I mean, we've never seen a situation like this. What I do think is we're going to now have we're going to have deeper investigations in intelligence committees. What's been interesting is that the Senate Intelligence Committee is out in front in terms of conducting an examination ahead of the House, and the senators on that committee so far they've seen no evidence of anything like this. They want to inquire about it, but they don't know what, like Marco Rubio said, I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, I have to ask you this, Tom Fuentes, because as we've seen, the president is not afraid to fire people. He fired Sally Yates, the deputy attorney general, after she basically went against his travel ban. So it makes you wonder what's going to happen now in this relationship between the president and the FBI director, James Comey. Do you think there will be any relationship left to salvage, Tom?
Good question. You know, again, this is uncharted territory, so it's a good question of what's going to happen in the days ahead in terms of all of this. And to David's point about the fact that there are numerous investigations, if they're going to be investigating whether there was a FISA wiretap on President Trump or his people, that's going to be a quick investigation if, in fact, there wasn't any, and the director's has already stated there wasn't any. So. Quick investigation.
Is it possible there could be anybody else who could have wiretapped, I mean, without authorization illegally? Is that possible?
Well, yep. Oh, everybody under the sun illegally, private investigators, and you have people that could have done it, but that's a serious felony to engage in a wiretap illegally. Now, it was alluded to by former Director of National Intelligence Clapper this morning made the comment about you could have other Title III agencies. And what he means by that is criminal wiretaps don't go to the FISA court. They go to the chief judge in each judicial district. And those kind of wiretaps, if it's based on criminal probable cause, can be conducted by the FBI, DEA, several other federal agencies can conduct criminal wiretaps. But a FISA is only the exclusive domain of the FBI.
And to be clear, we don't know if there were FISA warrants on any of his associates during the campaign or if there was an investigation on someone who was living in Trump Tower. But what we do know is that the president claimed in his tweet that Obama had ordered a wiretap of his phones. And now you have the former head of the DNI, James Clapper, saying that he wasn't aware of this. And now we have this new reporting from Shimon that the FBI asked the DOJ to knock it down because it simply wasn't true. So a fascinating development in this story that developed as of Saturday morning with that tweet. David Gergen.